So in multiplying integers, if you recall from lesson 1, this reads as not -5. That's the answer. Remember, a dash outside of parentheses stands for the opposite of 5. So you got to remember, this actually stands for the opposite of 5. That's what that stands for. So a dash out front of parentheses stands for the words the opposite of. And what we learned, though, is, well, the opposite of 5 is the same thing as -5. Those are equivalent. So those are interchangeable. -5 is the same thing as the opposite of 5. The opposite of 5 is the same thing as -5. So when I have a problem like this, when I give you -6 times -8, this math is not real world math. This math is textbook math. You will never see a word problem that tells you a negative times a negative. I've never seen a teacher yet show me a word problem that has a negative times negative in it. This is strictly textbook. So what happens, though, is we follow thinking. The dash can stand for the opposite of. So instead of saying -6, what I can do is I can pull the negative out and write the problem like that. I'm allowed to change -6 to the opposite of 6. And then the -8, I'm allowed to bring the negative out, and that's going to be the opposite of an 8. I can do that. And then what we have is those two dashes stay there, and 6 times 8, we've got that little table over there if we need it. We know that 6 times 8 would be then a 48. You could make your little math trick for your 8s there, and that would be 48. But notice how you have these opposite symbols. So remember, the opposite symbol is like, tells you to change the sign. So the opposite of a 48 turns into a -48. But then the opposite of a -48 turns into a +48. And what we said is important here as a shortcut. This is what we call the light switch method. So when I do the problem, all I have to do is focus on 6 times 8 is 48, and then we know that one negative will flip it to a negative. The second negative will flip it back to a positive. So it just kind of goes back and forth like a light switch. So one negative makes a negative, the second negative flips it back to a positive, and that's what we mean by a light switch. So if I have like -7 times 6, if I'm unsure of my 7 facts, I can come over and do my tic-tac-toe board. 7s is the tic-tac-toe. And then you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you go across 0, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6. So if you can get that rhythm, you'll have those down. 7 times 6 is the 6th fact. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's the 42. And if I think like a light switch, since there's only one negative, it just stays negative, -42. So if I have -2 times -3 times -5, and multiplying integers, it's a light switch. So we actually break it apart as all the negatives come out, and we focus on just the 2 times the 3 times the 5. That's a lot less stress on our brain. We know 2 times 3 is 6, so it's going to be 6 times 5. And you don't have to show all this work. You can be doing this all mentally. I'm just showing all my work. 6 times 5 would then turn into a 30. But notice how you have to do the light switch now. One negative is negative. The second negative flips it to a positive. The third negative flips it back to a negative. So therefore, the answer is a -30. So we have that kind of thinking there. So multiplying integers is all about bringing the negativity out to the numbers and then bring it all back in. So if I had a problem like -42 times, say, -8, my only interest is what is 42 times 8. That's the only math I have to know. If I can do that math, I don't need a calculator. 8 times 2, of course, would be 16. I'll carry my 1. 8 times 4 would be 32, plus the 1 would be 33. So 336. And then you think light switch. So one negative is going to make a negative, and the second negative is going to flip it back to a positive. And therefore, 336 will be your answer. And that's how you multiply integers without a calculator. It's just a light switch thinking.